What's up, Moto fans? Michael here at Moto Machines, and today we're going to be continuing the Triumph Tiger 900 Valley Pro build series with an installation guide of the Hepco Becker solid guards. So these guards are the latest addition from Hepco Becker to the Triumph Tiger product line, and they are the solid guards. They are basically a new model made for more extreme uses, like ripping your bike off-road really hard or wherever else you're going to throw at these. They feature an extra mounting point in the rear here, as well as some more tubing here to provide more structure and rigidity, hence the solid name. Now, regarding torque values for these, since these are critical mounting points, we recommend you use your manufacturer's torque specifications that you can find in your owner's manual. However, I find that those might be a little too tight for me, and since we don't have a torque wrench on hand, I'm going to torque them to what I think is appropriate, and you should use your own judgment, but I will recommend you to use the manufacturer's torque specifications. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to address with this, and it's the knee clearance thing that some people have been talking about. So I'm gonna hop on the bike here, and depending on how you ride your motorcycle is gonna depend on where your knees meet the guard and the clearance between them. I'm a relatively tall individual at 6'6", so I'm long in the legs, long in the torso, but I almost always ride on the balls of my feet and sit as far back in the saddle as I can go. And that gives me plenty of room here by my knee. And even if I shift my foot down to the heel to use the brake, my knee still has plenty of clearance and I'm fine there. I realize I am wearing jeans, and if you're using some beefy motocross knee pads, there might be some contact, but it's nothing that I'd be concerned about. I did find though, under really heavy braking, like emergency stops, there was the possibility of my knee to contact it, but only for a second or two. If you brace yourself properly, squeeze the tank, you really shouldn't have any issues regarding that. So the very first step to installing the Triumph Tiger solid guards from Hepco Becker is to remove the aluminum side pieces on each side, as well as remove the fog light, the mounting bracket, and disconnect the horn. So the first thing we're going to do is come over here to this aluminum side piece and then just take it off. Now once this is off, the way you're going to remove it is you're going to pull up and then downwards onto it. So a little trouble taking that off. This is why it's nice to have fingernails. All right, so lift up and then pull down and it goes out. And then I recommend just putting the bolt right back in the piece, and then as long as you don't kick it around, you won't lose it. All right, next up, we're gonna remove the fog light. So the way this works is it's just a plastic part, and you just kind of pull it towards you, and then kind of up a little bit. It'll come off eventually. And then we're gonna undo this. Right, it's okay to let that hang, it'll be fine. And then do the same on the other side for those two. And then next step, we are going to unplug the horn here. So we're gonna take our little hex Torx bit, and then you're just gonna depress the detent there and then pull, and it'll unclip right away. And then don't let it drop, and it threads out through this mounting bracket, and then you could just set this off to the side. Do the exact same on the other side. So after disconnecting the fog lights and removing them from this mounting bracket, the next thing we're going to do is disconnect these three 12mm bolts. So we'll just start on the outside and just loosen them up. Now this is going to want to drop on you, so just take caution. And then I'm going to just do this part by hand because they're loose enough now that it won't matter. So take these, set them off to the side. And just kind of hold it so it doesn't drop. All right. And then last but not least, you're going to disconnect the horn here. And then the horn's going to want to separate as well. So just kind of hold everything together. All right, so that's the horn mounting bracket. That's the horn. So you can take this part right here and set it off to the side with the other two bolts. And then what we're going to do, just so this isn't just in the way the entire time, so you spin it around this way, and then take it, push it back up, and then you take the horn like so, and then you take one of your bolts, because they're all the same, and then thread it back up into the main hole. And then what we're gonna do, because this doesn't hold anything up, we're just connecting the horn and this bracket back together because we had to remove these two bolts. So we're gonna get that a little snug, and then just so it's not just dangling around pulling on the wires, we're gonna take another one of the horn bracket bolts, and then either the left or right hole, doesn't matter what, we're gonna thread it back up in there, just a couple threads just to hold it there, and then the solid guard's going to mount up to these two positions as well, and then we're eventually going to pull this out to mount the solid guard. Once you've done the preparatory work of removing the aluminum side panels, the horn mount, as well as the fog lights and fog light mount, the next thing we're going to do is work on the right side of the guard. Now it's important to only do one side at a time, because if you remove both sets of engine mount bolts from both sides of the bike at the same time, the engine position is going to change, and then you're going to need a floor jack to jack the engine back up, or an engine hoist, or some way to lift the engine back up. And if I'm being honest, it's a real pain in the ass. So don't do that. So just do one side at a time, okay? Now, the very first step to installing, well, not the first step, but technically the second step, but we're going to call it the first step because I already said it was the first step. We're going to remove the front engine mount bolt here. You're going to need a pretty long extension to get to that one. Crack it loose. Now, there is going to be a spacer right behind here that's going to drop when you remove the bolt. So if you stick your hand right here as you're loosening it, you will catch the said spacer that I'm talking about. So just put our hand underneath. Pretty long bolt, so just keep at it. All right, that's it. We're just gonna, oh, I guess it's got some more. All right, so the spacer just fell, and if you look in my hands, there it is. So make sure to hold on to these and just set them off to the side at the moment. All right, so we have the right side of the guard here. Now, this aluminum spacer that you caught, you need this, so hold on to it. If you're installing this by yourself, you might try to find a second set of hands. It will definitely make it a little easier, but this is what we're gonna do to make it a little simpler. If you have a second set of hands, you don't have to do this, but if you're by yourself, you can try it, see how it works. So we're gonna take the guard, and then we're gonna work our way under where that aluminum panel was, and then if we come over here, this bolt that we used to hold the horn up, we are going to slowly back out so the horn doesn't drop, and then we're going to push it through the top hole right there, and then line it up there. and then kind of lift the guard a little bit, and then thread it so it holds just enough that you don't have to try and fight it. So the next thing we're going to move on to is attaching the front engine mount bolt. After you've attached it at under the beak just to hold it on, we're going to move down there, and you're going to need the M10x90 along with the supplied washer, the aluminum spacer that you caught, as well as the short black spacer supplied with the guards. So what we're going to do, and this is where you might need that second set of hands as well, we're gonna come through under here and then kind of lift the guard up and around. This might be a little difficult, but basically the way it's gonna work, you're gonna have the bolt running through this white part of the guard into the spacer, and then if you look under here, we won't be able to really show you it, but on the other side of this mounting point, this is where the spacer slides into. So it's gonna kind of look like this. The bolt's gonna go through the white part, into the spacer, through the engine block, and then into the aluminum spacer that's sitting there. So again, it might be a little difficult. You can do it. All right, so if I'm being completely honest, we kept dropping the spacer, so we just cut that bit out. But you can actually see the spacer up under there where my finger's pointing right now. And then all you're gonna do, once that's in, is just push the bolt in, and then take the requisite Allen and start to thread her in. Again, this doesn't have to be super tight right off the bat, but you do want it mostly in. And then now that that's out, what we can do is come up here to the beak, and we can remove this. And then again, just to stop the horn from moving around, we can remount that. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to move on to is removing this bolt here. So, I'm going to take our ratchet, our Torx bit, and the extension. Well, you don't really need the extension here, but you know, it's quite a bit of torque on that one. And then I suspect this bolt's going to be rather long as well. Maybe not, but that's what it looks like. Set that off to the side. And then now we're going to take the M10x55, which looks like this, as well as the needed Allen, and then just rotate this downwards and thread it in. No washers needed. It doesn't have to be terribly tight, just tight enough that it'll hold the engine in place while you do the other side. It's going to be the exact same process on the other side of the bike. Okay, we're on the left side of the motorcycle now. The very first thing you're going to do is remove the left front engine mount bolt. We've got it 90% of the way out already. So just take that, pull it out. Now in the supplied hardware, there is a black plastic spacer that kind of looks like this. This is going to come to the front of the motorcycle, and it's important to do this, otherwise you won't be able to get it in. Push it in there. And then next we're gonna take the M10 by 110, it's the Big Johnny with the washer, and the long black supplied spacer. And it's gonna work kind of on the same way as the other side. It's gonna go through the guard, into the black spacer, into the engine mount. Capiche? Capiche. Again, you might need a second set of hands for this because this might be somewhat difficult, but with enough patience, you should be able to get it. And that's where that second set of hands come in. All right, now just barely tighten this. It just needs to kind of hang. It doesn't need to be tight. Just enough to get the threads to bite, and that's all you need. I would say no more than like 10 turns, maybe, if that. So once that is on, we're gonna move on to the rear mount bolt here. So you're gonna grab your Torx wrench, Torx socket, and then just crack it loose. This one's gonna have quite a bit on it, and it's about the same length as the other side as well. So once it's loose, spin it off. And set that off to the side. And then you're gonna take your M10 by 60, no washers or anything needed, and thread it in. Now, this is a good time to mention that the left guard needs to physically sit on top of the right guard. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the horn attachment back up or the plastic spacer in properly. So what I mean by physically overlap is the guards physically overlap each other, and the left one sits on top of the right one, as you see here. The same goes for under the beak here. The left sits on top of the right, or if you want to argue semantics, the other way around. But you are going to need the M8 by 40 with its washer, as well as the aluminum spacer here. And the way it's going to work is this bolt is going to go through both guards, and then the washer on top, and then into the horn, and then into the mounting bracket. So I'll show you how that looks here. If you have a second set of hands available, this is where you would grab them, because this part is a little difficult. I realize my hand's blocking the shot a little bit, but so spacer on top here, and then that goes there. And then with a little bit of coercing, everything should line up. All right, now that that one side is in, we can go ahead and move towards the other side. Same process. Bolt goes through both into the spacer, into the horn mounts. All right, and then we're gonna take our ratchet and just tighten them just a little bit. Well, without dropping it, don't do that, but all right, that'll be good for now. Now let's move on to the next step. So the next step after tightening up the front stay mount is to mount the fog lights. You can skip this step if you don't have the fog lights. We've already done the one on the left side, as you can see there, and we're about to show you the right one. The right side is the exact same process as the left side. Now, in order to mount the fog lights, you're going to need the M6x12 bolt with the corresponding washer, as well as the mounting bracket. Now, the mounting bracket is side specific, and the way you can tell that you have the right side is when you hold it up to the bike, it kind of runs in line with the guard and then sticks down at an angle kind of. It's all straight when you look at it head on. If it's kind of cockeyed or just a little off, it's probably the wrong side, so just grab the other one. Now, the way we're gonna do this is take the bolt and just mount it up. Now, don't get it super tight right off the bat, just tight enough that it doesn't really move around on you a ton when you go to attach the fog light. That's probably good there. That's still relatively loose, but just tight enough that it won't move around. The next thing you're gonna need is the OEM bolt for the fog light, the one with the Torx head, the corresponding washer, as well as one of the tiny lock nuts. And the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna take our fog light and push the bolt here through, like so, and then the washer on top, feed it through the mounting bracket here, and then just spin the lock nut on. Without dropping it. All right. Well, I thought I had it, but evidently not. All right. That's good enough for right now. The next thing we're gonna do is grab your supplied zip ties, because you're gonna need them. We're going to run the wire, try to make it as nice and tidy as possible, and then connect it back into these connections here and put everything away. So we're gonna take the wire. Personally, the way I'm gonna do this is run it up and across, and I'm gonna put a zip tie around the base here to hold it, and then leave everything fairly loose, although that way nothing's final. And then I'm actually gonna go ahead and connect it now so I can see how everything lines up. Now, you should only need 2 zip ties to do this, but however you would like to do it is up to you. And then just run the zip tie over the back of the bracket here towards the back, and then I'm gonna bring it under so you can see that there. Push it through, and then just tighten it up just a little bit. When you're happy with the way it looks, you can go ahead and cinch everything down, snip them, and then the way we're gonna tuck the wires here, if you look, is there's actually, get some more light on it. There's these little prongs here that these sit in, and they just push up into there. So we have the fog lights all zip tied down and mounted up. These are the connection points that I was talking about. They're little gaps that these plugs sit in. They go in at an angle. They basically sit up and down sideways in it, even though they're running vertical. If you can see what I mean, they're kind of at an angle a little bit. But once you're done with that, the next thing we had to do was loosen up these bolts just a little bit. This is magnetic. We had to loosen up these just a little bit so that these spacer down here sat a little more flush. The next thing we're gonna do is go through and tighten up the side bolts as well as the top braces again. And then this is going into aluminum, so don't go super tight. Once there's a physical stop, definitely stop. I wouldn't go anything past that. That's good there. Come through on the other side. Do the lower one first here. And then I'm gonna go to the upper connecting part. All right, the last step is to add the bolts into there. We need the M6x16, which look like these, along with the washers and lock nut. So this can be a little finicky. Just take your time, don't get frustrated. I know that I keep repeating that, but the truth of the matter is this installation isn't really that difficult. You just need to be able to take your time and try not to rush through it. The second you start to rush through it is when you're gonna get upset. All right, that's one on. You're gonna need a 10mm open end box wrench to tighten these up as well. So make sure you have that handy if you can find it. Okay, so we got them threaded on with a little bit of patience. You're gonna take your 10mm box end wrench and your Allen and tighten them up. Okay. All right, the very last step is to reinstall your aluminum side panels here. It's a little tricky, I'm not gonna lie, but you kind of come in at an angle and then it's a feel thing for sure. And like that. I'm gonna take our tool and tighten her down. All right. We're all done. That's all we've got for you guys today. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for all the latest Moto Machines madness. If you're interested in more content like this, click the card in the top right-hand side of the screen to be taken to our entire Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro build series. Thanks for tuning in, ride safe, and stick around for some tasty B-roll.